Hey, hi, hello. Welcome to Diana Emerson Today. We are listening to Disturbing Cases, and this is Lacey Rutherford.
911, what's the address of the emergency?
Yes, I am. Please let me know. Hello?
911,
There's been a shooting at 2710 Hilda Avenue.
say the address one more time for me.
A shooting at 2710 Hilda Avenue.
Hilda or Hilden?
Hilda.
Hilda?
Yes.
Okay, and who shot who?
My husband saw my daughter.
Around 2:30 a.m. on June 18, 2014, Robin Rutherford called 911 operators in Hamilton, Ohio, to report the most bizarre thing. Her husband, 55-year-old Alfred Rutherford, had shot their daughter, 29-year-old Lacey Rutherford, and her boyfriend, 41-year-old Steve Watkins, over a drug-related argument. When police arrived at the house at 2710 Hilda Avenue, they were shocked to discover that Alfred had shot his daughter right in front of his grandson, 6-year-old Brian, and some other kids at the house for a sleepover. When police eventually caught Alfred, all he had to say was, "They ought to pin a medal on me for this." Why did Alfred Rutherford kill his daughter and her boyfriend over a simple argument? Before disaster struck, the Rutherford family lived in Hamilton, Ohio, in Butler County, Ohio. The large city of Hamilton has a population of about 63,000 people and is famous for its vibrant art scene. Known as the City of Sculpture, you can find over 40 sculptures while exploring Hamilton, and you might enjoy a tour of the renowned Pyramid Hill Sculpture Park and Museum. Hamilton has a violent crime rate of 26.5%, higher than the national average of 22.7%. But for the Rutherfords, Hamilton was home despite its flaws. Lacey Rutherford was a 29-year-old mother of one, and she had a drug addiction. She and her parents, Robin Rutherford and Alfred Rutherford, often got into fairly serious arguments over her drug use, particularly her heroin addiction. Lacey grew up to become a troubled young woman who frequently had issues with the police, sometimes drug-related. By June 2014, Lacey had accumulated 5 cases at the Hamilton Municipal Court dating back to 2012. Some of her charges included theft, driving under suspension, drug abuse, and possession of drug abuse instruments. She had also fallen on some hard times because she couldn't keep a job for long, and she spent all her money on recreational drugs, so she had to move in with her parents. On June 17, 2014, Lacey appeared in municipal court on drug-related charges. At the time, in June 2014, 29-year-old Lacey and her 6-year-old son Brian lived with Lacey's parents in Hamilton. Around 2:30 a.m. on June 18, 2014, 911 operators received a call from Robin Rutherford at 2710 Hilda Avenue.
911, what's the address of the emergency?
Yes, I am. Please let me know.
Where are you at? 911,
Hello?
911,
There's been a shooting at 2710 Hilda Avenue.
say the address one more time for me.
A shooting at 2710 Hilda Avenue.
Hilda or Hilden?
Hilda.
Hilda?
Yes.
Okay, and who shot who?
My husband saw my daughter.
Your husband shot your daughter?
Yes.
Is she okay?
No.
Is that her crying?
No, that's her son.
Okay. Is she alert and conscious?
No.
No?
I think she's dead.
You think she's dead? Okay. How old is she?
28.
She claimed that her husband, Alfred Rutherford, had just shot their daughter, Lacey, and the daughter's boyfriend, Steve. According to Robin, Alfred had immediately fled the scene in his red Escort after committing the murders.
Where's your husband at?
He's leaving.
Okay, what's he driving?
A little red Escort.
Do you know the license plate?
Um,
Are you looking for me?
FPS, I didn't get the rest of the plate.
What was the beginning of the plate?
I couldn't get the rest of the plate because off.
Okay, what's his name?
Alfred Rutherford.
Where's your daughter at right now?
She's laying in the hall floor.
Okay, where's the gun?
It's laying in the bedroom.
What kind of gun was it?
Shotgun.
The shotgun? But he doesn't have the shotgun, correct?
No.
Okay, what way is he going?
I don't know. He just took off.
Okay, what way would he be going down that street, though? Where would you be, if you left it, your house and you were down?
Heading towards Millis Boulevard.
Towards what boulevard?
Millis Boulevard.
I can't understand you. What boulevard?
Millis Boulevard.
Nillis?
Yeah.
Nillis, okay. And you're at 2710 Hilda. You're also at Laurel Avenue?
Yes.
Okay. Can you go to your daughter for me?
Yeah. She's
Okay.
dead.
She is dead?
Yes.
Okay, where did you shoot her at?
In the throat.
In the throat? Okay. Yeah, you stay on the phone with me, okay? I want to get as much information as I can get from you. Where do you think he would go? Do you have any idea?
I have no idea.
Towards Nealon.
In the background, the 911 operator heard the sound of someone crying. When they asked Robin who it was, she said it was Lacey's son, 6-year-old Brian.
Who is that?
That's your friend crying.
Okay, how old is he?
6.
He's only 6 years old?
Yes.
Okay. Your daughter was 27?
Yes.
Okay. You're
28.
28. He's not hurt or anything. Your grandson's not hurt, is he?
He's not hurt now.
That's just the way he went.
Yes.
Okay.
He went straight down Hilda Avenue towards Millis.
Okay. Since you don't want to be able to do CPR or anything like that, do you want to go ahead and keep him out of the room and just like maybe go into the living room or something? Okay, let's do that. She said he just headed towards that way. He went straight down Hilda.
Yes.
Okay, we're trying to get the officers to find him. Does he have any family members or anything that he would have been driving maybe to their house or?
No.
Okay. Were they fighting?
Yes.
Have they ever gotten an argument like this before to this? I mean, or is this something that?
Yeah, they've argued before.
Okay. You don't have any family members or anything that you can?
No, not right off the top of my head.
Okay, what's your name, ma'am?
Rutherford.
Okay. Is that my officer?
Yes.
Okay, talk to him, okay?
Robin told the operator that she saw Alfred fleeing the scene in his red Escort, but she could not see the license number. First responders to the scene found Lacey lying in a pool of blood in the hallway. She had been shot multiple times, including a shot to the throat with a shotgun. As they swept the house to find out if there were other active shooters in the house, police found Steve in the bathroom. He had been shot once in the head with a shotgun. Brian, Lacey's son, and one of his friends had been in the house that night for a sleepover. While the kids were sleeping, Lacey and her father got into an argument over a gun that Alfred believed was missing. Alfred asked Lacey if she knew where the gun was, because he suspected she had sold the gun to buy drugs, but the gun was not the only bone of contention. Lacey was going through a rough patch, and she had to move back in with her parents to save on rent costs. However, according to Alfred, Lacey allowed her friends to enter the house and steal things. In fact, he believed the missing gun was with Steve. As the argument got heated, Robin, Alfred's wife, got involved and started questioning her daughter about the gun's whereabouts and her drug addiction. Soon, boiling over in a rage, Alfred brought out his 12-gauge shotgun. When Lacey saw that her father had brought out the gun, she felt panic, but in her anger dared him to shoot her. She said he couldn't, that he didn't have the stomach for it. It would be the last thing she ever said. Alfred raised his shotgun and fired several shots at Lacey, one of them hitting her in the throat. Lacey's 6-year-old son Brian, who had been observing the fight, stood unmoving as he watched his grandfather shoot his mother to death. After murdering Lacey, Alfred went in search of her boyfriend Steve and found him in the bathroom. He raised his shotgun and fired once into his head, killing him instantly. Hamilton Police Chief Scott Scrimmizzi later described the scene as very tragic. He said, "Unfortunately, there was a house full of people. Terrible situation because a number of them were children. The victim's son was present. It's a horrible situation, just a horrible situation." Alfred Rutherford, affectionately known as Ike to his friends, was a troublesome and troubled man. Growing up, Alfred had several run-ins with the police for petty crimes, like stealing and loitering. By 2014, he had built himself a long and colorful rap sheet In Hamilton Municipal Court, Alfred had 17 cases dating back to 1989. Some of the charges included operating a vehicle impaired, robbery, drug abuse, and obstructing official business. But despite his legal troubles, Alfred was known as a nice guy to people around him, and his friends loved him. After searching for him for about 9 hours, police eventually located Alfred at Joyce Park off River Road, Hamilton, around 11 a.m. on June 18, 2014. He had ditched the red Escort and was now walking along Joe Nuxall Boulevard, unarmed. Once police found him and arrested him, he was indicted by a Butler County grand jury for capital murder. Alfred was charged with 1 count of aggravated murder with a death specification for allegedly shooting Steve Watkins, and 1 count of first-degree murder for shooting his daughter, Lacey. He was also charged with 1 count of having weapons under disability, and 1 count of being a repeat violent offender. His bond was set at $2 million. While in custody, Alfred admitted that he had murdered his daughter and her boyfriend without showing even an ounce of regret for his actions. Police officers reported that during a phone call, he was overheard bragging about his crimes, saying, "They ought to pin a medal on me for this one." Still, prosecutors offered him a plea deal. Plead guilty and avoid the death sentence. Prosecutors believed the case was simple. There were multiple witnesses ready to testify that Alfred was the killer, and all the evidence pointed at him, added to the fact that he had already confessed to the murders. A trial would only put unnecessary strain on the poor boy who had watched his mother die, and Robin who had to call it in. But this was not enough to convince Alfred to take the plea deal. Meanwhile, Alfred's lawyers, Greg Howard and David Washington, were working round the clock to convince Alfred to take the plea deal before the prosecutor's office withdrew it. According to Howard, the lawyers just wanted to make sure he was able to make his decision knowingly and intelligently and voluntarily. We had shown him all the evidence in this case months ago, and once again wanted to reiterate to him that this is what the jury is going to see, and the prosecutor's going to get up and call you a monster. It took showing Alfred the grotesque photos from the crime scene for prosecutors to convince him to accept a plea deal. He later told Judge Keith Spade, "I seen the pathetic pictures this morning, and it broke my heart." Finally, a moment of contrition, Alfred was no longer looking to be pinned with a medal for murdering his own family. In January 2015, Alfred Rutherford was sentenced to life without parole for the murder of his daughter Lacey and her boyfriend Steve. Alfred was already suffering from a liver disease called cirrhosis before the trial. At the time of the trial, doctors had given him 16 months to live. He would pass away 2 years later in 2017, alone and terminally ill. Dying 2 years after he began serving his sentence may be viewed by some as him escaping justice, especially after robbing his grandson Brian of a life with his mother. Alfred murdered his daughter and her boyfriend in cold blood in front of his grandson. Although he pleaded guilty, he never gave a reason for doing what he did, if there was a reason. Do you believe justice was served in this case? Or should he not have been offered a plea deal and given the death penalty instead? Share your thoughts in the comments.
Crystal Rogers.
The lady you just saw in this clip, walking out of the store, is 35-year-old Crystal Rogers. This was the last glimpse of her. In 2015, Crystal Rogers, a 35-year-old mother of 5, mysteriously disappeared during the 4th of July weekend. Her family reported her missing on Sunday, July 5, 2015. And on the same day, her car was discovered abandoned on the side of the road of Bluegrass Parkway, near her home. The vehicle had a flat tire, with her keys in the ignition, and her phone and purse had been left behind. Tragically, Crystal never returned, and despite having a few potential suspects, the case remained unsolved in the following months. The situation took a dark turn on November 19, 2016, a mere 16 months after Crystal's puzzling disappearance. During a hunting trip on their family property in Bardstown, Crystal's father, 54-year-old Tommy Ballard, was fatally shot. Interestingly, while the official investigation into Crystal's case had hit a standstill, Tommy had been actively pursuing his own inquiries into his daughter's fate. Did Tommy's quest for truth bring him too close to dangerous secrets, leading to his untimely demise? Or were these two incidents completely unrelated? And what truly happened to Crystal? Nestled in the heart of the Bluegrass State, Bardstown, Kentucky is a charming and historic gem that beautifully showcases the essence of Southern hospitality and rich American heritage. This quaint town, with its well-preserved 19th century architecture, exudes a sense of timelessness, offering visitors a glimpse into the past. Known as the bourbon capital of the world, Bardstown is a place where rolling green hills meet the famous Kentucky Bourbon Trail, making it a haven for whiskey enthusiasts. However, Bardstown is not just renowned for its bourbon. In 2012, this place was named the most beautiful small town in America in the Best of the Road competition, sponsored by USA Today. Regrettably, from 2013 onwards, this idyllic hamlet experienced a darker chapter, marred by a series of unsolved murders, casting a somber shadow over its once peaceful streets. Nonetheless, it was the supposed safest haven for Crystal Rogers and her family, who had been longtime residents of the area. Born on April 4, 1980 in Bardstown, Kentucky, Crystal Maria Ballard entered the world as the eldest child of Tommy and Sherry Ballard. Growing up with her brother Casey and sister Brooke, Crystal formed strong bonds with her family, particularly sharing a special connection with her father, Tommy. Described as a daddy's girl, she would turn to him whenever she faced challenges, knowing he would go to any lengths to support her. Crystal's character was marked by qualities of fun, care, happiness, humility, and beauty. Her friends attested to her amazing personality, depicting her as the ultimate friend, always willing to drop everything to help others without expecting anything in return. Known for her selflessness, Crystal was the type to give the shirt off her back if someone needed it, all while maintaining a straightforward and unapologetic honesty in her interactions.
Crystal is my oldest. Growing up, she made friends easy, but she was just always shy, very down-to-earth girl. Me and Crystal always was close. I was very lucky to have her for a daughter.
She mama's girl.
She probably was, but she was a daddy. She knew if she needed something, she'd go to her daddy.
Unfortunately, we do not know much about her background. However, what we do know is that she married a man named Keith Rogers when she was quite young. With Keith, Crystal had 3 daughters and a son. However, her marriage didn't stand the test of time, and after the birth of her 4th child, Crystal decided to part ways with her husband. Despite the separation, they shared a good relationship, and she retained his last name. Even though the two shared custody, the children mostly stayed with their mother. Crystal was fortunate to have a supportive family who did their best to help. However, she and her children required their own place to live. Following her separation from Keith in 2012, Crystal rented a house from Brooks Howe, an affluent construction businessman in Bardstown.
And then when Crystal moved into his rental house and got to know him, she said that she was going to go on a date with him.
Brooks received a warm welcome into the Ballard home, as someone they believed could be an ideal match for their daughter. Their relationship progressed rapidly, and soon they were living together with Crystal's 4 children. In 2013, their family expanded when Crystal gave birth to Brooks' son, Eli. Crystal was an exceptional mother, always prioritizing her kids. She was fiercely protective of her children and expressed displeasure if anyone else attempted to discipline them. Despite growing up with her strict mother, Sherry, Crystal was very easygoing and loving with all of her kids. It's not easy to raise 5 children, but Crystal never complained, even when juggling multiple jobs to make ends meet. Despite the size of their family, financial difficulties weren't a concern. The Howe family held prominence in the small community of Bardstown, owning multiple properties alongside their construction business. Brooks's brother, Nick Howe, worked in the Bardstown Police, and in 2014, Brooks himself ran for the position of sheriff in Nelson County.
My name is Brooks Howe, and I look forward to becoming your next Nelson County Sheriff. I'm a proud native of Nelson County, and my family and I are excited about what the future holds for our community.
Despite appearances, Crystal's family sensed something amiss in Brooks and had all the makings of a toxic relationship.
Crystal had 5 children. The baby, Eli, she has with Brooks Howe. She was with that child 24 hours a day. Brooks was a good father to Eli, but her other children, he did not accept them like his own.
Brooks treated Crystal's other 4 children differently than Eli, showing less love and care toward them. Living together didn't translate into shared responsibilities for all the children. While they split grocery expenses, Brooks only contributed to Eli's needs, leaving Crystal to cover the cost for her other 4 children with her own money. While there can be some understanding when it comes to covering the expenses for 4 children, given that it's a considerable number, Brooks's approach struck Crystal's family as excessively extreme. Crystal and Brooks also had multiple disagreements, and he attempted to restrict her from spending time with friends and family. Though her family was worried about her situation, she was still willing to work on the relationship for the sake of her children. Independence Day festivities in America are synonymous with parades, fireworks, barbecues, concerts, and most importantly, family reunions. In Bardstown as well, the 4th of July occasion of 2015 was no exception, as residents indulged in the customary celebrations. However, it was a different story for Crystal's family. Little did they know that this festive occasion would mark the beginning of an agonizing ordeal for them, one that would endure for years. On July 3, 2015, Sherry Ballard received a text from Crystal's 14-year-old daughter, Kylie, inquiring if she had heard from Crystal.
She asked me if I talked to her mom. So I just picked up my phone, I texted Crystal, and I said, "You need to text Kylie, she's looking for you."
Typically, Crystal was prompt in her responses, so Sherry initially didn't think much of it and carried on with her day. However, her concern heightened later that night when she received another text from Kylie.
I got another text later on that night, and it was from Kylie again and asked me if I heard from her mom again. I said, "No, she never texted you," and she says, "No."
The growing unease set in, as it was highly unusual for Crystal to remain unresponsive for an extended period. Over the next 2 days, family and friends anxiously attempted to contact Crystal, but there was no response.
I started calling around just seeing if people had talked to my daughter, because she's not responding to me, and I knew that was different.
Unaware of the situation, on July 5, 2015, Crystal's sister Brooke contacted Sherry to share the same concern. However, she had more bad news. Brooke previously had a troubling conversation with Crystal's live-in boyfriend, Brooks Howe.
What happened when you called Brooks? He said that he hadn't seen her since Friday.
According to Brooks, he hadn't seen Crystal since the early hours of Saturday, July 4, 2015. He said that when he went to bed that night, Crystal stayed up late playing games on her phone. However, when he woke up the next morning, she was no longer there. Although Brooks claimed not to have spoken to her, he calmly explained that he wasn't worried and assumed that Crystal spent the following Saturday, July 4th, at her cousin Sabrina's place. As soon as Sherry Ballard learned these details, she knew it was time to contact the police. On the evening of July 5, 2015, Crystal's parents, Sherry and Tommy, and her brother Casey, all went to the Nelson County Sheriff's Office to file a missing persons report. Coincidentally, while they were on their way, they saw Brooks driving down the road, so Sherry went to talk to him.
And I got out of my car and walked up to the door, and he rolled the window down. I said, "Have you talked to Crystal?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Well, where is she?" He said, "I don't know." I said, "Did y'all have a fight?" He said, "No."
Brooks insisted there was no disagreement between them, leading Sherry to believe Crystal had no apparent reason to abruptly leave without notifying anyone. When Sherry noticed little Eli in the back seat of Brooks's car, alarm bells started ringing more.
If he had told me they got in a fight, I'd have been more apt to believe maybe she just got mad. But as soon as I saw that baby in the backseat, he never kept Eli.
Crystal had never separated from Eli, and when she couldn't be with him, she entrusted him with her sister, but she never left him alone with Brooks.
And I told Brooks, I said, "I'm going to file a police report, a missing persons report." He looked at me like I could have been talking about anybody he didn't know, and he said, "Well, I think that's what you should do." He never offered to go with me.
Sensing something amiss, Sherry and the family wasted no time and promptly filed a missing persons report with the police. At first, the police had little to offer in terms of assistance, assuming the belief that Crystal, as an adult, might have become frustrated with her life, raising 5 children, and chosen to leave independently, intentionally avoiding contact until there was concrete evidence. Crystal's family, however, insisted that her children were her top priority, and there was no way she would have left them behind unless something dire had happened to her. Before long, a clue emerged. While still at the police station, the Ballards received a call from Crystal's ex-husband's son from his previous marriage, reporting that he had noticed Crystal's car on the side of the highway in Bardstown. To verify this information, Casey and Tommy promptly went to the location, and indeed Crystal's 2007 maroon Chevrolet Impala was discovered, abandoned near mile marker 14 of the Bluegrass Parkway. Immediately they sensed something was wrong. The car had a flat tire, yet the keys were left in the ignition. Crystal's purse and phone were inside, but there was no sign of her. At first glance, it seemed as though Crystal might have pulled over there due to the flat tire and exited. However, a crucial question arose. Why would she leave her belongings inside? Even if she needed assistance, she could have easily called her brother or her dad. Another peculiar detail caught their attention. The driver's seat had been slid back, and the back of the seat was upright. This was highly unusual because Crystal typically drove her car with the seat close to the steering wheel, and the back of the seat lowered. This fueled their theory that she might not have been the one to drive the car back to that location. Acting on their suspicions, they once again contacted the police.
It definitely raised some suspicions about the fact that maybe we weren't just dealing with a missing persons report.
Concerned for Crystal's safety, law enforcement swiftly took action. They seized the car for inspection and dispatched search teams to scour the surrounding areas for any trace of Crystal, and media outreach was initiated to seek public assistance.
We're currently processing a vehicle. The air unit has searched along the Bluegrass Parkway. We're hoping that somebody saw something somewhere that will get us going in the right direction.
In the close-knit community of Bardstown, the residents refused to remain passive in the face of Crystal's disappearance. Mobilizing the strength of their community ties, Crystal's family spearheaded their own search efforts, rallying the support of hundreds of volunteers, all united in their determination to find the mother of 5.
When everyone knew we were searching for my daughter, gosh, we had tons of people. I mean, tons of them. She was just unbelievable. If we asked for it, it's like they were there.
Despite the search operations from the law enforcement ceasing, Crystal's family took matters into their own hands, and in collaboration with local residents, continued scouring the area for several days, with no luck. Tommy, Crystal's father, dedicated all his time to finding his daughter, initiating his investigation by gathering information and raising awareness about the case. But there was one person absent from the collective endeavor: Crystal's boyfriend, Brooks.
Did her boyfriend Brooks ever join in the search for her?
Never. Never. Not from day one. He never lifted a finger to do anything as far as those searches went.
Crystal's family voiced their suspicion about Brooks right from the outset. Not only was Brooks the last person known to have seen Crystal, but he also failed to provide any assistance in the search efforts or display genuine concern for her well-being. The family strongly believed that Brooks held more information than he was letting on. Taking their concerns public, Crystal's parents went to the media to express their suspicions. When her case was featured on the Nancy Grace Show, Brooks consented to an exclusive call.
Joining me right now, in addition to her parents, Tom and Sherry Ballard, her boyfriend that she lived with, they're in their 3-bedroom suburban home. Brooks Houck is with us. So, Brooks, you go to bed and she's still playing games on her phone. The next morning, around 8 o'clock, you notice that she's missing. Did you report her missing?
No, ma'am.
Why?
That is a great question, and one that I definitely want to get the public and the media. I was not in the least little bit alarmed in any way, shape, or form. We have had a stress relationship at times, and one of the ways that Crystal has always chose to hope her to deal with that is by going to a young woman's name, Sabrina, that is her cousin, her dad's brother's daughter, whom she's very close to. And she spent the night there on several occasions.
When you say several, do you mean 1, 3, 20?
In the neighborhood of 4 to 6.
Okay.
Like that.
Tom and Sherry Ballard, were you aware of that? Do you know who Sabrina is?
Yes, ma'am.
That's my niece.
Okay. Did you know that she goes and spends the night over there when she's having an issue at home?
I've known probably one time.
Right. Okay, I want to go back to Brooks Houck, who was the last person to see her alive. Brooks, did you go on to the July the 4th get-together that day?
Yes, I did.
Even though you didn't know where she was?
I was expecting, I put in a phone call that morning and then around lunch. And usually the maximum period of time that she has stayed gone has only been like a day to a day and a half at the most. And as a result of that, I thought that she would.
Did you try to call her?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, ma'am.
Did you try to call her during that time?
Not while I was there at the fort. I called her prior to leaving to head in that direction. Yes, ma'am.
Some people have accused you of not being involved enough in the search efforts. What's your response?
That is a great question, and one I certainly appreciate you asking me. And that is all of my efforts in searching for her has been done behind the scenes with the Nelson County Sheriff's Office.
Like what?
Detective Snow, who's leading the investigation, Jason Allison, who's a deputy there assisting him, along with the Kentucky State Police Agency Post Number 12.
Although Brooks defended himself, further police investigation painted a more concerning picture. Crystal's family disclosed unsettling details, revealing that Crystal had attempted to leave Brooks on multiple occasions in the past. However, fear held her back, as he possessed both wealth and influence, potentially enabling him to take away their child. Sherry recalled the last time she saw her daughter, on July 2, 2015, when Crystal had shared some alarming information. She revealed that she had learned from others that Brooks was renting his properties for cash, evading taxes, and had been dishonest about his tax payments.
She looked at me out of the blue, just out of the blue. We were not talking about that. And she's like, Mom, he thinks I'm an idiot. She said, but I have everything. She said, I have all of his rentals. I have his tax papers. I have everything. And she said, and I hid that. And to this day, Fallon, if I have one big, huge regret, it's because I did not ask her.
Crystal further confided in Sherry about her plans to leave Brooks and her job assisting him with the rental properties. This revelation intensified the concerns already raised, but there was another layer to this unfolding mystery. Coincidentally, Crystal wasn't the sole woman in her family to go missing under mysterious circumstances. Her disappearance bore an eerie similarity to that of her aunt, who vanished nearly 5 decades ago. In January 1979, Crystal's 19-year-old aunt, Sherry Ballard Barnes, had mysteriously disappeared from Bardstown. Her vehicle was discovered submerged in the Ohio River a week after her disappearance, but investigators found no trace of the teenager. At the time, Sherry was 7.5 months pregnant. Tragically, Sherry's remains, along with those of her unborn child, were unearthed in a rural area 3 years later, in August 1983. Following this, Sherry's husband, Edsel Eddie Barnes, faced legal consequences in connection with her death. He was arrested and ultimately convicted in 1984 for hiring his friend George Weir to kill his estranged wife, so he would not have to pay child support. Eddie was eventually sentenced to life in prison. Disturbingly, Crystal had once found herself in an uncomfortable situation with Brooks when he inquired about the murder of Sherry Ballard Barnes. She later confided in her mother about how strange that conversation had been. Amidst the looming mystery surrounding Brooks' house, Investigators approached him seeking a detailed timeline of the day of Crystal's disappearance. His account largely echoed the story he had previously shared with Crystal's family, with some more details added. According to Brooks, on the afternoon of July 3, 2015, after filling up gas in his truck at a gas station, he met Crystal at home for dinner. Following the meal, he took Crystal and Eli to his family farmhouse. Detectives collected the surveillance footage, which seemed to align with his account. The truck was visible in the footage, although it couldn't be verified whether Crystal was present in the car. Brooks continued stating that after spending some time there, they returned home after midnight around 12:30 a.m. He claimed that when they got back, he went straight to bed, while Crystal remained awake, engrossed in playing games on her phone. However, when he woke up at 7 a.m. the next morning, Crystal and her car were gone, leaving Eli on the bed with him.
He seemed to be concerned that Crystal was missing?
No, not particularly. And he pretty much remained that way through most of the investigation.
So what did you make of that?
I found it odd.
The explanation appeared innocent enough, but seeing Brooks' lack of concern for the mother of his child, detectives felt that something wasn't adding up. To address these concerns, they invited Brooks to the Nelson County Sheriff's Office for further questioning. On July 8, 2015, Brooks willingly participated in a formal interrogation conducted by Nelson County Detective John Snow, who was leading the investigation. The detectives began the interrogation by revisiting questions about the relationship between Brooks and Crystal. Although Brooks acknowledged the challenges in their relationship, he maintained that they were working through them.
Have you and Crystal ever talked about breaking up? I mean, obviously we have fought just like any other couple, but in the last several years, I mean, that it's came up, but we've always found ourselves together moving forward. So it's mentioned, but it's never happened, and we've always found ourselves together moving forward.
From there, the conversation shifted to the events of the night of July 3rd, where detectives began highlighting potential inconsistencies in Brooks's account.
And so do you remember, did you go straight home on Friday night, or did y'all stop somewhere, or, because I'm thinking if that's their normal 7, 8 o'clock in the evening, it might be dinner time. Did you stop and eat something, or did you go straight home?
We did not eat anything. I went straight home.
Okay. So you went straight home. So if we assume that he's correct in about 10 minutes after midnight, another 10 minutes to the house or so. So you
I don't see it being that late. I mean, if that's what some of the things say, I guess you'd have to kind of go by that. But yeah, we didn't stop anywhere. We went straight home.
You could feasibly be home by 20 minutes after 12. If he passes you at 10 minutes after 12.
All right.
Which is a little off from what you originally told me. And you just said, I still think it's a little off, but we'll go with what the camera says as opposed to memory, because sometimes memory is not that great.
All right.
And I checked the time on her camera, and I'm allowing for about a 9-minute gap there between what my watch says and what her camera says.
All right.
So which puts you leaving there about 11:55, which, again, 15 minutes to Caddyshack is not terribly bad in the rain. So it could have been that he passed it 10 minutes after midnight, putting you home roughly 20 minutes after 12.
All right.
Fair enough?
Yes.
So you guys get home 20 minutes after 12. Right there, but thereabouts. I think you said you went to bed first. Do you remember about how long you were home before you went to bed?
I went to bed immediately.
So when you guys got in, you went and did your nightly routine, and you're going to bed. I think you told me that she stayed up, and Eli, did he stay up as well?
He was.
And where was she at?
If there's any activity going on in the house, he doesn't want to go to bed. If everybody turned the lights out and we just got in the bed, he's going to follow us and they're lay down with us. But if I go to bed and she stays up, he's not going to come in there to bed till all the lights are out and then she goes to bed. If I was doing something like that and she was in the bed, he's going to stay up with me until the lights are out until I go in there. Do you see what I'm
Sure?
Yeah. So that's what
he's going to stay up with mom. So you go to bed, she stays up. What's she doing?
She's just on her phone, playing, I don't know what game, but she normally plays a game.
Right.
She's got several of them on there, but I don't know which one.
Okay. So she's on her phone, messing around, doing whatever, and you go to bed. Do you know what time Eli came to bed, or she put him into bed?
I don't know.
So what time do you think you got up on Saturday morning?
Almost
I
9.
probably woke up around, in between that time, like 6 or 7 o'clock, and then I left. I did my normal thing, changed my clothes, put my clothes on, and headed out. Shortly after that,
Detective Snow focused on a specific detail during his questioning of Brooks. Brooks's phone log indicated that he received a call around midnight when he and Crystal were purportedly on their way home. The detectives were keen to know the identity of the caller, especially since the call lasted only 13 seconds. Brooks claimed he couldn't remember the caller, but offered to redial the number in the detective's presence. The call was traced to a man named Steve Lawson, an employee of Brooks' house. Surprisingly, this call would become a pivotal piece of evidence, but not in the way anyone would have anticipated.
Saying that, but hey, I need your help while I got you on the phone here. Do you remember the other night you called me really, really late, and I forgot what you asked me. Can you? I guess it wasn't on the phone. I might have been tired. I know it was pretty late at night. Can you remember what you asked me or what you were after? I can't remember. Sure, I can. I called and asked you for them numbers for a house. Oh, for a rental house. Yes, sir. And what did I forgot? What did I tell you? You told me that you would call. What's her name? Katie or whatever. She handles all that. Crystal. Crystal. Okay, I apologize. Yeah. And she said she handles all that, and that you would get back with me on it. All right. Thank you so much, Neil. Hey, if there's anything I can do, you give me a call. Thank you. You have a good night now. Yes, sir. God bless. Thank you.
In the call, Steve mentioned that Brooks needed to contact Crystal before providing information about the rental properties, as she was the one handling those affairs. This statement raised eyebrows, considering Brooks claimed Crystal was right beside him. Seeking clarification, Detective Snow delved deeper into the matter.
So that begs a question in my mind.
All right.
If she's in the truck next to you when he called, why would you need to call her about getting numbers from her?
Because being that late at night, we're headed to the house. I just wouldn't. She normally not going to deal with stuff that late. And I mean, I probably didn't look at the phone to see who it was calling. I'm sure I just answered it.
But he said you told him that you need to call her.
All right.
Why would you need to call her? I mean, that's an odd phrase for someone who's sitting next to you in the truck. Do you understand? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see exactly what you're saying. But that's what if that right there is what I told him. That right there is what I told him. We wasn't on the phone that long. But normally I would just, she handles all that, and that's what I would do. She's not going to want to mess with that kind of stuff that late. I'm sure I probably tried to answer the phone really quickly, so that it wouldn't, a lot of times after I get moving, Eli goes to sleep, sometimes he goes to sleep in the truck, sometimes he doesn't. So, if you want to call him, you got his number and everything, if you want to call him, you can call him.
But before the interrogation could progress further, it was abruptly halted when Brooks received a call from his brother, Nick Howe, a Bardstown police officer.
Well, okay. So I guess where I go from here, we're still getting video from different places, along that route. Can I get this? Sure.
Hello? No. I'm up here. I know that you didn't know. I'm up here in this interview with the Detective Snow. I've been up here a good little while. I'm filling out this statement here and everything. Are you telling me that's what I need to do? I'm not. I know that. But the way that I look at it is, I'm innocent. I ain't done nothing wrong. I know you told me innocent people got jammed up. If you're telling me to leave, I'll get up and leave. If you want me to. I know I'm going through a lot, but I'm trying to get this guy to help me. I don't think she's ran off with some other guy. I don't believe that. You can't make me think that. No. Yeah, so do I. I'll do exactly what you're telling me to do right now. You want me to get up and leave? Man, I don't think these people got a detective just to skin me for no reason. Man, look, this is not their family. This is not. All right, thank you. He thinks y'all are fuck is what he thinks.
I don't know who he is.
Nick, my brother. He just, no, I know that, but I'm not. He just said just to keep sitting up there, to give a statement, do an interview, whatever I got to do. But he said, no, just to keep just letting them just beat you to death over this right here. Just ask what you got to ask. And let me know.
It was clear that Nick didn't want Brooks to continue speaking with the detectives. He instructed Brooks to leave, and Brooks promptly followed his brother's advice, leaving the interrogation unfinished. Since there was no solid proof against Brooks, he was free to go. Brooks had previously taken a polygraph, so the detectives were waiting on that result. But unfortunately, it came back inconclusive. They knew that to solve this case, they had to dig deeper. Nick's call raised suspicions, prompting the detectives to scrutinize him. Therefore, the day after, Detective John Snow called Nick to ask if he would be willing to talk to them about Crystal's case.
Hello. Nick. Hey, it's John Snow over at the Sheriff's Office. What's going on? Oh, well, still trying to find Crystal. Yeah. Hey, do you mind, are you busy right now? Do you mind to come down and talk to me? Man, I really don't have any information to give you. I think, I think Brooks has been completely cooperative. I have anything known to give him, and I'd be the first one to be there. So you're not going to come down here and talk to me? That's correct. Okay, Nick.
Despite Nick's denial, detectives kept an eye on him. They soon discovered an interesting piece of information. On July 3, 2015, Nick took his police cruiser to the family farm, where Crystal and Brooks allegedly went, which seems suspicious. They decided to search the car with dogs, and surprisingly they got a hit on the cruiser's quarter panel, indicating the presence of bodily fluids. The vehicle was then taken to the KSP forensics lab for testing. The crime lab performed a luminol test on the trunk of his police cruiser, and a blanket found in the trunk tested positive for bodily fluids. Fluids which could include blood, saliva, sweat, or urine. The investigation took a compelling turn when it was revealed that just hours after Nick's call that ended Brooks's interview, a surveillance camera captured the two brothers, Nick and Brooks, separately driving to their family's farm, one after another. These findings raised serious questions about the potential involvement of the Houck brothers in Crystal's disappearance. Despite the increased scrutiny, Nick did not cooperate with the police. It was only after Bardstown Police Chief Rick McCubbin gave him a direct order that Nick sat down for an interview with the Nelson County detectives on July 15, 2015. The interview commenced on a seemingly lighter note, with detectives inquiring about Nick's knowledge of Crystal and Brooks's relationship and the frequency of their interactions.
I guess it's just kind of start from the beginning. You know what you're talking to us about, right? Sure. Okay. What is that? Yeah. Crystal Rogers? Okay. How do you know Crystal Rogers? She's my brother's girlfriend. Okay. And how long have you known her? How long have they been? I'm assuming. Did you know her before they started dating? Oh, no, I didn't. So how long have they been dating? 2 or 3 years, maybe. What interactions did you have with Crystal over the years? Almost none. Okay. I mean, did y'all? How often would you see your brother and her, or just her? I mean, I passed her on the street. That's about it. I mean, my brother's got a bunch of rental properties and stuff. I mean, I just don't see him. I see him on the road. That's about it. Okay. He's so busy. We don't hang out much anymore. Okay. And do y'all go to family functions together around Christmas and Thanksgiving? Or? If we've got time, we do. I mean, I run about a dozen rental properties. We're full time for PD. And obviously got family. And sure. I mean, we're just busy guys. Sure, I understand that completely. I think we can sympathize with that. Definitely. So, in the 2 to 3 years they've been dating, how many times have you been around Crystal?
I've been down to this house, I don't know, maybe half a dozen times or so.
The detectives proceeded to inquire whether Brooks had ever complained to Nick about Crystal, to which he responded in the negative. However, what raised eyebrows was Nick's claim that he couldn't recall whether Brooks informed him about Crystal's disappearance, or he'd learned it from somewhere else. This was unusual, as Nick, being a police officer, would typically have been the first person Brooks contacted when his girlfriend went missing. Despite the unusual nature of this claim, Nick insisted that his brother had no involvement in Crystal's disappearance. The interview then progressed to the point where the detectives asked questions about Nick's police cruiser.
Like keeping your trunk. What's a normal duty setup? Like I know ours looks like, evidence store exploded in our trunk.
Yeah, I mean, well, I've got a cardboard box back there. I mean, it's got, say it's got a flashlight. So we're obviously starting the flashlights in the car. There's many forms. There's a PVT, fire extinguisher. There's a department use shotgun in the car. There's a bag up front with all kinds of stuff. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in the car.
You generally keep all that stuff in your truck all the time.
Some of it's in the front, some of it's up front in the seat. All the forms I use every day would be up front. I've got something that attaches to the passenger seat, and it's got all the forms, accident report forms, and all the stuff I use every day.
You take that car home with you to take home the car. Yeah. Somebody else uses it unless it come up.
The only other person that used that car is Tom Blair. He officially one person, and then it was passed down to me. But that's been a while back.
Yeah. How long has it been?
That's been a couple years.
Okay. So you've been the only one that's driven it the last couple of years.
Oh yeah.
Y'all stop sticks or anything, stairs?
I don't. I mean, there's some units that do.
So what you keep in the trunk is a cardboard box with some extra stuff in it, fire extinguisher,
hats, just rain jacket.
Hats, rain jackets.
I mean, I can sit here and try to figure it out on those, but I thought we had them up with hats.
When they took your car, when the PD took your car from your house, what was in the trunk then?
Well, it's this morning grand jury came up. It was just all the stuff I just told you, but there was also one of the things I remember was there was just a regular blanket for moving. Where I moved from 104 and then you drive to where I'm at now, I took the blanket that was there and I just put it between the furniture to keep it from marring up the furniture, the finish on it. You went down the road and it's just going to jingle around and
we didn't have the trunk of your cruiser. You get furniture in the trunk?
No, I didn't. No, what I did, I got the blanket at the farm. I used it, and then I was going to take it back in a few days. I forgot about it. So it's sitting there in the trunk, but no, I used my trailer and truck.
Observing Nick's reluctance to provide meaningful information, the detectives opted for a different approach. They inquired about Nick's recollection of visiting the farm on July 8th, to which he claimed not to remember. So they laid their cards on the table, indisputable evidence in the form of surveillance footage.
Do you remember going out to the farm the evening of July the 8th?
I don't, but I was very easy to get out there.
That was incidentally the same night that your brother was, I think the same night your brother was interviewed by the police. Yeah, Wednesday, July 8th. You said there was cameras out there on that house. Mm-hmm. The cameras would have caught your car following Brooks. Wouldn't right out to the windows. But you said generally, you would just go out to the farm and you would just meet him there. On this occasion, y'all both.
Well, usually I don't meet him there. I mean, he's just out there doing his own thing, and I go out there and do my own thing. I mean,
if that's what happened that night, it would have been just perfect timing that you were following right behind him, if you just so happened to meet him.
I see what you're saying.
So think back. Was there a time that you all both went out there at the same time for a specific reason?
Not that I saw.
So it just would have been coincidence that your car was following right behind his truck when it passed by that camera going to the farm.
Yeah, that's happened before.
Mm-hmm. So this night in particular, you would have left after dark. Y'all came together and you would have left after dark. You remember that night?
Easily could have.
Okay. Do you remember it?
No, I don't.
Do you remember remember, were you on the skid house? Were you at your mom's talking? No, I mean, I can't even remember what he was doing. I mean, it was the 8th that skid came down. I mean, you remember being out there with him at the farm? But I think I remember seeing him out there. So you didn't, you're saying you didn't intentionally follow him out there? And did you all leave, do you remember leaving together? Mm-hmm. Why did he leave earlier or did you leave earlier? Do you remember? I don't have any idea. Did you leave first or did he leave first? I don't know. But you remember, I mean, it's just been a week ago. Mm-hmm. Driving down past the Ballard, your car behind his truck. I mean, you got to turn in the farm there. Mm-hmm. You remember? Can you go back and put that in your head? Just drive down that road and you see your brother in front of you. What happened after that? I can't.
The detectives found Nick's inability to recall the events of that day at the farmhouse with Brooks, even though it had only been a week, to be highly peculiar. They began to entertain the possibility that Nick might be intentionally withholding information. After a short break, they returned to the topic of Nick's police cruiser, this time disclosing information about the luminol test.
Just kind of get back to the cruiser here for a minute. Is there any reason that there be any blood in the trunk of your cruiser? No reason at all. So you don't transport any biological evidence on a regular basis? When's the last scene that you had somebody that was bleeding? And I had with my brother, and something like this go on. This doesn't go on all the time, so I mean, we're going to call it like it is. Mm-hmm. Is it, you don't want to remember, or can you remember? I can't remember. Oh, man. I'm sure you maybe remember something like that. That's been a long time ago. I mean, there's no blood in front of my cruiser. I can guarantee you that. Now, what about on anything that was in your trunk? Will there have been blood on anything that was in your trunk? There's no way. Absolutely not.
Nick consistently denied the presence of blood in his vehicle, while the detectives lacked a direct link connecting Nick to Crystal's case. They remained unsatisfied with his responses, so they requested that he undergo a polygraph test, and, to their surprise, he agreed. When the results came back, Nick was brought back for another round of questioning. This interrogation started off with the detective revealing the polygraph test results to Nick, stating that he had not been 100% honest. As it turned out, he had failed the polygraph test. It was determined that he had lied in answering the questions about Crystal, particularly the one about whether or not he knew where she was.
Just so you know the facts. Its results on the test. Sexual indication. 100%. And then greater than 99. What's greater than 99? 100, right? Further question. You know where Crystal is right now? Are you hiding any information about what happened to Crystal? Yeah, you didn't tell me the truth on both of those questions. So, I mean, I'm telling you, I'm not going to sit here and make up my stuff. We're past that. So the cat's out of the bag as far as we go now. And again, I'm not going to play the games with you, detective, do all the read stuff, and everything else. I'm telling you, two individuals who know the way investigations work, what the facts are. And the time is now, today, to start fixing this problem.
To elicit a reaction, the detectives presented a hypothetical scenario suggesting that Brooks might have killed Crystal, and Nick assisted in disposing of the body. In response, Nick vehemently denied any involvement, expressing strong objections.
I mean, do we need to take this any further?
I would like to take it to the truth. That's the whole reason.
It's a test. I mean, you're talking crazy. Well, I mean, you're talking crazy.
Is that your rehearsed response to what was going to happen today? Because it sure sounds like it.
I don't know what it sounds like. I'm just saying.
Well,
You're talking crazy.
What's crazy about it? Explain to me.
The accusations you're making.
Yeah, I'm saying you're not involved.
Absolutely not.
Well, no. That's why we did the polygraph, to find out. Well, now we know.
I told you what now?
You told me before you had nothing to do with it. Right?
Yes.
Well, now we're past that. Because I've already shown that you didn't have something.
I don't know what the test.
I just showed you.
Okay,
I just showed it to you.
But I'm telling you, I just had.
I'm telling you wrong. I mean, I can't make it. I'm not trying to hurt your feelings, but I'm just telling you the truth.
That's what
telling you the truth.
We're past that. I've already shown you.
I've taken the file. Did you get anything else from me? Because I'm not going to sit here and we're not going to go back and forth like this.
You do whatever you want to do. I
want to cooperate with you. I'm not here.
Tell me what happened. Tell me what you know.
I don't know anything.
We're past that. You've already shown me that you do.
I know nothing.
Despite maintaining that he had no information about Crystal's location and was not involved in her disappearance, Nick's demeanor during this interview was noticeably agitated, a stark difference from his calm and composed behavior in the initial interview. Since polygraph tests are not admissible as evidence in court, the detectives had to release Nick despite their strong suspicions against him. Just months after this incident, on October 16, 2015, Bardstown Mayor John Royalty, Police Chief Rick McCubbin, and City Attorney Tim Butler held a press conference announcing that Nick Houck was fired for interfering with an ongoing investigation into Crystal Rogers' disappearance. However, he was not named a suspect in that case.
Earlier today, he issued a final order, which I believe you all have a copy of, and that order terminates Officer Houck from the Bardstown Police Department.
Can you tell me about the disappointed and the actions that Mr. Houck? Can you talk about your reaction?
Well, yeah, disappointed, obviously. It's certainly not a happy day for any of us involved at all that we're even having to address this. But I think in the order, I hope it addresses a lot of my feelings, what I looked at. What we don't have is I know many of you have asked, the charging documents that I submitted to the mayor, Officer Houck, which now that it's adjudicated is public record. And I lined out a lot of stuff in that would probably, address that. This is a case really where it's as much for what a police officer didn't do as much as what he did do, if that makes sense. I looked at it from my perspective that
did something to hinder the investigation, whereas in other respects he didn't cooperate with the investigation, and that's laid out in that statement. But as far as I know, in terms of the sin of commission, where he took some sort of action, I think that would be the only one that I'm aware of.
Yeah, it's and he really, think about it, he injected himself into this. He made that call. He was not necessarily on the radar. But by him making that call, he therefore entered into the entire investigation. That, yes, of course, that was the first and really only forward-moving thing that he did. The rest of it was more of a passive way. His lack of candor stood out to me as much as anything. And like I said, a lot of what he didn't do as much as what he did do.
Later on that same day, Brooks Houck was officially designated as the suspect in the investigation into Crystal's disappearance by the Nelson County detectives. Moreover, they stated that they considered it not merely a case of disappearance, but rather one of homicide, operating on the presumption that Crystal had already met an unfortunate fate. Unfortunately, despite being identified as the primary suspect, investigators struggled to unearth conclusive evidence directly linking him to the case. Consequently, he remained at large, evading both incarceration and media scrutiny. Things, however, were different for the Ballard family. Not only were Crystal's parents and other loved ones appearing on locally and nationally syndicated television programs, but they were also arranging searches through the region, especially surrounding the location where Crystal's vehicle had been found. Tommy, Crystal's father, went to great lengths to raise awareness about Crystal's disappearance by orchestrating the placement of numerous signs across Bardstown. Virtually every street corner in the town featured a poster or flyer adorned with Crystal's face and name. The entire town was saturated with reminders of the missing woman, making it impossible to travel from one part of the town to another without encountering her story. Tommy even had the image and information about her painted on the pickup truck, transforming it into a moving billboard. He spared no expense in his relentless pursuit for answers. He devoted their family savings to deploying cadaver dogs and hiring private investigators. Additionally, rewards were announced as an incentive for anyone with potential leads to come forward. Sadly, none of these efforts yielded any tangible leads. For the next several months, Tommy persisted in maintaining hope for his missing daughter. Despite the lack of significant progress, he tirelessly organized one search after another, determined to broaden their scope, even if it meant venturing beyond state borders. Actively taking charge, he frequently spearheaded local search missions in rural outskirts surrounding Bardstown, mobilizing dozens, if not hundreds of volunteers at a time. Tommy documented every detail that he deemed relevant, whether it be a peculiar object discovered during searches or local rumors circulating in town. It became apparent that he was conducting his own independent investigation, turning his quest for his missing daughter into a full-time commitment.
What was it like to watch your brother in action?
He was determined that he was going to find his daughter. He was not going to give up. I mean, he was 110% determined.
There was a lot of disappointment along the way. Day after day went by, month after month, no answers. What drove him?
The love for his family. My husband was a very good father. He would do anything for his kids.
In a significant turn of events, toward the end of the year, a major development unfolded in the investigation. In December 2015, an announcement was made that the first person had been arrested in connection to the disappearance of Crystal Rogers. The individual in question was 52-year-old Danny Singleton, a longtime employee of Brooks House, often regarded as his right-hand man. Singleton was known to have a friendly relationship with Crystal, having worked alongside her. On December 16, 2015, Singleton was arrested on 38 counts of perjury, stemming from his grand jury testimony earlier that year. Detectives alleged that he had repeatedly lied under oath. Ultimately, he pleaded guilty to lesser counts of false swearing the following year, serving approximately 8 months in jail. He completed the rest of his sentence on probation. Whether he cooperated with investigators or provided any evidence against his friend and employer, Brooks House, remain undisclosed. Entering 2016, the investigation saw another significant breakthrough. A white Buick emerged as a crucial piece of evidence when authorities received a tip about a suspicious car, potentially linked to the case. Witnesses reportedly observed the vehicle, a white Buick, parked at the Houck farm on the night Crystal disappeared. This vehicle was identified as belonging to the Houck brothers' grandmother, Anna Whitesides. When the police sought to execute a search warrant to seize the vehicle, Whitesides disclosed that she owned a white Buick, but had sold it to a dealership in Louisville just weeks after Rogers went missing. Subsequently, authorities issued a subpoena for the 82-year-old woman to testify before a grand jury, seeking an explanation for why she disposed of the car immediately after Crystal's disappearance.
When officers tried to execute a warrant to seize the car, however, Whitesides told them she had recently sold the 16-year-old car to a dealership in Louisville. The Commonwealth may very well believe that Whitesides' vehicle was used to dispose of a body, and that the vehicle was sold in an attempt to prevent the Commonwealth from obtaining any evidence from it.
Whitesides, however, refused to testify before a grand jury. Her attorney, Jason Floyd, contended that her statement to the police, along with information from the car buyer, sufficed. Subsequently, a judge decided to maintain confidentiality regarding all future proceedings involving Whitesides. In August 2016, Kentucky State Police conducted multiple searches on Whitesides' properties, hoping to uncover any clues, but unfortunately, the searches yielded no results. Amidst these developments, Tommy Ballard appeared to grow somewhat paranoid. In 2016, he became a fervent advocate for safety, caution, and routine. He urged family members to install security cameras at their homes and regularly carry firearms. Aside from promoting good habits like checking locks, he seemed to be experiencing heightened stress and anxiety. Tommy went so far as to install a dash cam in his truck, recording his movements on a regular basis. In the fall of 2016, Tommy confided in his wife, Sherry, that he was certain he was being followed. The identity of the pursuer remained unclear, but to those close to Tommy, It appeared that he harbored a fear of something terrible happening to him or his loved ones as the holiday season approached. Little did anyone anticipate that Tommy's apprehensions would tragically materialize, casting their family into yet another unfortunate tragedy. On Saturday, November 19th, 2016, roughly a year and a half after Crystal went missing, Tommy Ballard headed out for a hunting trip with Crystal's 12-year-old son, Trenton. It was the start of deer hunting season, and Tommy, being a seasoned hunter who was familiar with the local rules and regulations, had eagerly anticipated this occasion for several weeks. Crystal's brother Casey was also supposed to tag along with his son, Brandon.
Dad's on the farm we hunt on for 10, 12 years maybe. And we've always hunted on there every year. That morning, my son Brandon went with me. Crystal's son Trenton went with Dad. Dad's trip went on towards the back of the farm, and I was in front of the farm.
The two were hunting in a field off the Bluegrass Parkway, situated on private property owned by the Ballards. It was a quiet and secluded spot, one of Tommy's favorite places. During this particular early morning hunting trip, the two briefly separated. Tommy's grandson headed back to the truck they arrived in, likely to retrieve something they had forgotten. Meanwhile, Tommy stood in the field they had just occupied, awaiting his grandson's return. It was at this moment that a gunshot echoed through the air. Casey, who was in a different area of the property far away, heard the shot from multiple fields away.
I pulled up to the front of our farm there, heading to the edge of the woods. It was still dark, and I heard a gunshot.
Tommy called out to his grandson, and once they both reached him, Tommy mentioned that he had been struck by something. He instructed Trenton to seek assistance, and the 11-year-old hurriedly went to summon help by contacting family members and alerting authorities to the scene.
My phone rings, and when I picked up the phone and answered it, it was Trenton. I just heard him say, Mama, Papa's been shot.
My phone started ringing. It was Trenton on the phone, and he was screaming. I told him, I was like, just stay right there, Trenton. I'm on my way.
I was panicking, I was trying to throw my clothes on and get ready, and I went in the bathroom. I told Trenton, I said, and I ran over and knelt down to Tommy, and I shook him, and I just begged him to get up.
By the time emergency services arrived, it was already too late to save Tommy Ballard. He succumbed to the gunshot wound just moments later, having been struck once in the center of his torso, with the bullet exiting through his back. While authorities were uncertain whether it was a hunting accident or a targeted killing, the Ballard family was convinced it was the latter.
When my husband was shot, I knew in my heart it was no accident.
I feel like Tommy started putting himself out there too much. It's like the more determined he became, the braver he became.
I think someone wanted my husband out of the way. I think they knew he was never going to quit pushing to find my daughter. And that's why I think my husband's not here today.
Tommy's death weighed heavily on the Ballard family, particularly on Sherry, who not only lost her husband, but also lost her high school sweetheart, a man with whom she had spent nearly 4 decades.
It's very, very hard for me to continue to look for Crystal without him.
Without Tommy, Sherry's quest for justice became incredibly challenging. Alongside that, she had to contend with a protracted legal battle against Brooks. Throughout this time, Sherry cared for Crystal's 4 older children, but she lost the custody battle for Eli, who remained with his father, Brooks. Although she initially had visitation rights, they were later revoked. Brooks' family accused Sherry of manipulating Eli, claiming the boy asked many questions about his father and mother after visits with his grandmother. In response, Sherry maintained her belief that Brooks was involved in Crystal's death, but asserted that she would never act against Eli's best interest. Despite requesting supervised visits, her pleas were denied. In 2017, Crystal's case was handed over to the Kentucky State Police, but progress remained slow. However, just when it seemed all hope was lost, a helping hand emerged. Oxygen Media decided to produce a documentary series on Crystal Rogers' disappearance. The show's host, Emmy-nominated reporter Stephanie Bauer, reached out to Crystal's family and began delving into the investigation.
My name is Stephanie Bauer. I've been a reporter for over a decade and covered notorious crimes across the country. I've come to Bardstown, Kentucky to see if I can find out what happened to Crystal Rogers.
She also enlisted the expertise of veteran homicide detective Dwayne Stanton, who boasts a wealth of experience, having worked on celebrity cases in over 750 homicide investigations. Together, they embarked on a journey to unravel the mystery of Crystal's disappearance. In their discussions with the Ballard family, they discovered that authorities had returned Crystal's car after processing it. Since then, the car had been preserved in the same condition within a storage unit. In their quest for evidence, Stephanie and Detective Dwayne sought assistance from forensics reconstruction specialist Joey Stidham to reprocess the abandoned car. Joey, a former Kentucky State Trooper, informed them that the investigative resources in Kentucky were severely limited.
Stephanie, how are you?
Good to see you.
Wayne Stanton, MPD, Washington, D.C. Good to meet you. Retired. Thank you, sir.
Joey Stidham is a former Kentucky State Police officer, but he now has his own company that specializes in forensic investigations.
He revealed that the Kentucky State Police Crime Lab typically only accepts 10 pieces of evidence for testing in murder cases. The team pondered whether this limitation might have affected the investigation into Crystal's disappearance. After processing the car, numerous bags filled with potential evidence were collected. Before conducting the forensic search, a cadaver dog checked the Impala for the possible presence of human remains and began barking. The dog, after sniffing around the car, sat in front of the open trunk and began barking, even jumping inside the trunk, an unusual behavior according to her owner. Following the dog's indication, a luminol test on the trunk revealed a significant stain. Despite turning out not to be blood, the discovery underscored the importance of examining all evidence. Unfortunately, other items collected from the car did not provide any significant evidence. Failing to retrieve evidence from the vehicle, Stephanie and Dwayne turned their attention to Tommy's evidence box, which contained items collected over the 16 months of investigation. Surveillance footage, notes, documents, and more. Countless hours of work were encapsulated in this box.
Tommy kept his entire investigation inside of that box. Videotape, locations, addresses, communication, documented, categorized, inventory. I've been doing this 40 years now. I've never seen anything like it.
While sifting through the boxes, they uncovered a detail that had not been publicly disclosed. In Walmart surveillance footage from July 3, 2015, Crystal was observed shopping with Eli around 4:30 p.m. This marked the final time Crystal was captured on camera. However, according to a witness account, Crystal was seen returning home at approximately 5 p.m. This piece of information highlighted a significant gap in Crystal's movements.
Come and take a look at this. So we found this surveillance footage in Tommy's box. It's at Walmart on July 3rd. So this is the last footage of Crystal in person. It's the last time she was seen for a fact on camera.
Could be the last hours of her life. 4:36 p.m.
Okay, so actually this note that Tommy's written says, a witness saw Crystal bringing bags into the house at around 5 p.m.
Physically saw Crystal.
We know at 5 o'clock she's not missing yet. So what we know for sure is Crystal was last seen on camera, undeniable, at Walmart around 4:30.
The docuseries also delved into the perceived meticulous planning behind Tommy Ballard's murder, drawing parallels with another unsolved murder in Bardstown, concerning the level of planning and execution. Bardstown police officer Jason Ellis was killed on May 25, 2013, just before 3 a.m., as he stopped at the Bluegrass Parkway exit to clear debris from the roadway. This occurred on his way home after completing an overnight shift. Ellis was shot and killed upon exiting his car. Despite authorities labeling it as a premeditated murder, the case remains unsolved to this day. Intriguingly, some Bardstown residents speculate that it could be an inside job, carried out by someone intimately familiar with the town, echoing similarities to Tommy's case. However, it has not been officially proven that these two cases are connected in any way. While the Oxygen documentary explored significant aspects of the case and garnered considerable media attention, it did not lead to the resolution of the case. Despite enduring the worst pain that a mother and wife can experience, Sherry Ballard exhibited remarkable strength and courage. As the years passed, even without significant progress in Crystal's case, Sherry refused to give up her battle for justice. The family continued to put up flyers featuring Crystal's face, and every year on the anniversary of her disappearance, they worked tirelessly to spread awareness, talking to the media to keep Crystal's story alive in people's minds. However, as the anniversary of Crystal's disappearance in 2017 approached, a peculiar incident occurred. Signs related to the disappearance of Crystal Rogers were mysteriously taken down throughout Bardstown and stolen. Authorities were puzzled by this act, questioning who could have had an interest in such a low-life act. It didn't take long for the Bardstown police to find the responsible individual. In late July 2017, Crystal Malpin, a Bardstown resident, was arrested on the accusation of stealing signs asking for information in Crystal Rogers' disappearance. The connection was not just in their same first names. In fact, Malpin was dating Brooks Howe. Malpin eventually received a 60-day suspended sentence with a 2-year conditional discharge. That means Malpin would be on probation for 2 years, but she would serve 60 days in jail if she violated the terms. In July 2018, Brooks Howe was once again thrust into the limelight when he was charged with unrelated theft charges.
Media of his filing Glick explains why he was in court today.
Brooks Howe was in court Thursday afternoon after being arraigned on felony theft charges after stealing from Lowe's. Brooks Howe walked into the Nelson County Justice Center with his head held.
He pleaded not guilty to the charges and was later acquitted in a jury trial in Nelson County. Despite all these legal troubles, Brooks Howe always stayed out of trouble when it came to Crystal's case. He was the only official suspect in his girlfriend's disappearance. Yet, due to insufficient evidence, he continued to live his life outside. Crystal's family was worried whether there would ever be any breakthrough in the case. Sherry's persistence paid off in 2020, when the FBI took over the case. And immediately there was a new surge of searches. In August 2020, more than 150 federal agents served search warrants at 3 sites owned by Houck and his family members. In August 2021, agents searched a subdivision where Houck owns properties. They reportedly used a cadaver dog during the search, and investigators were seen using a jackhammer on the driveway of a home. The driveway was dug up, and large chunks of it were hauled out of the neighborhood in construction trucks. On September 7, 2021, the FBI announced that the search in Bardstown had concluded, with several items of interest sent to a lab in Virginia for testing. In the same month, a Nelson County grand jury indicted Joseph Lawson, a 32-year-old local man, on charges of conspiracy to commit murder and complicity in tampering with physical evidence. The indictment did not identify any victim, but the dates given for the murder corresponded to Crystal's disappearance. Crystal's relatives confirmed that they had been notified of the indictment prior to it being made public. On October 5, 2023, a significant breakthrough occurred in a case that Crystal's family had been waiting for over 8 long years. Her former boyfriend, Brooks Howe, was arraigned in Nelson Circuit Court on charges of murder and tampering with physical evidence in connection with Crystal's death. Despite her remains never being found, authorities believe she was long dead. The prosecutor revealed that the investigators had recovered a gun sold by Houck's brother under a fake name, a firearm detectives believe could be a match for the murder weapon in the killing of Roger's father, Tommy Ballard. Due to the active nature of this case, detectives have refrained from providing additional details. Currently, Brooks Houck is being held on a $10 million bond at the Hardin County Detention Center in Elizabethtown, Kentucky. After Brooks Houck's arrest, Sherry refrained from making a public comment in the media, adhering to the prosecutor's advice. However, she did share her overwhelming feelings in a Facebook post. Despite this case moving toward justice nearly a decade later, Sherry faces a challenging road ahead. While she may hold no doubt about Brooks's involvement in her mind, the legal principle of innocent until proven guilty prevails. The hope is that she can obtain justice for both her daughter and her husband, initiating a process of healing for herself and the remaining family. Sherry is currently entangled in a prolonged custody battle with the Houck family for Eli, who recently turned 10. The heartbreaking reality is that regardless of the legal outcome, Eli confronts the daunting prospect of growing up without the presence of his mother, and potentially his father if he is convicted. This story is exceptionally chilling, with its multitude of aspects and angles each shrouded in secrecy. What are your theories about Crystal's fate? Do you believe Brooks played a role in her disappearance, potentially leading to a tragic end?
You want to say something to your kids? Mom, you raising your kids. Me and my mom and dad. You ain't raising shit. You on her in your back smoking crack. You ain't going home long. I'm going to keep you about a week.
Later, he would establish his total dominance.
Say it clear.
The video you witnessed is not from a movie or scripted. These are real people, victims who fell prey to a monster, 36-year-old Maury Troy Travis. His crimes were so horrific that the police chief in the area ordered psychological counseling for anyone who had even watched the footage of his victims. He would lure victims into his basement, where he would subject them to unimaginable torture and bizarre rituals. What drove Maury Travis to commit such horrific crimes? How did he lure his victims into his basement without raising suspicion? The central character of today's story, Maury Travis, was born on October 25, 1965. He was known by the nickname Toby and lived with his mother Sandra Travis and his father Michael V. Travis in Carr Square, a public housing complex in St. Louis, Missouri. They later bought a house at 1001 Ford Avenue in Ferguson in April 1976. Maury Travis's childhood seemed relatively ordinary. While he was undeniably introverted and reserved, he was also known for his exceptional politeness and respect. Adults who interacted with him perceived him as someone who was highly mindful of etiquette and social norms. One teacher distinctly called Maury as an unusually quiet teenager, who even took the initiative to mow his neighbor's lawn. His demeanor at school was unremarkable, and those who knew him, including teachers, parents, and peers, never suspected him of being capable of violence. When police later interviewed individuals who attended school with Maury or lived near him, many of them didn't even recognize who he was. He didn't leave a memorable impression. In all of his childhood that is known to us, the separation of his parents was the only potential trauma that he may have experienced. He graduated from McClure High School in 1985 and served 2 years as an Army reservist. Following that, he worked as a medical and dental assistant. Additionally, he managed to secure employment locally with haulage companies and even volunteered at a local nursing home. Maury Travis's enrollment in Morris Brown College in 1986 at the age of 22 seemed like a positive step forward. However, it was also in this private institute in Atlanta where he encountered and formed a relationship with cocaine, sending his life into a downward spiral. His addiction quickly escalated to a severe level, costing him $300 a day. Maury's plunge into criminal activities to support his habit swiftly brought him to the attention of law enforcement the following year. Up until that point, he had a clean record, making his sudden shift into illegal behavior quite unexpected. Rather than a gradual escalation, his actions took a surprising and abrupt turn from his prior conduct. In March 1988, during his college spring break, Maury engaged in a string of robberies that raised eyebrows. To everyone's surprise, he targeted 5 shoe stores in St. Louis within 8 days. What added an unusual twist to these crimes was his choice of weapon. Instead of a loaded firearm, he used a plastic toy gun to instill fear. This abrupt shift into criminal behavior was truly unexpected, especially given his clean record prior to these incidents. This is where Maury Travis took a sharp turn into criminal activity. The armed robberies he committed resulted in his initial capture. Witnesses provided the police with details about his car, leading to his arrest. The detective handling the case was taken aback, as Maury didn't fit the typical image of a criminal. Upon being apprehended, Maury claimed to have hazy memories of the crimes, attributing it to drug influence. While awaiting sentencing, he underwent a drug rehabilitation program and claimed to have successfully overcome his addiction. Despite these efforts and his clean record before this, the court had taken his actions into account during proceedings. Character references poured in support of Maury, including one from a congressman and U.S. representative. These testimonials highlighted his rehabilitation efforts, asserting that his criminal behavior was an aberration in his character. Despite this acknowledgement, Maury received a 15-year prison sentence on July 5, 1989, at the age of 23. This marked the start of his time behind bars for his criminal actions. From the outset, Maury realized that his time in prison wouldn't be easy. He attested to the inhospitable conditions, citing frequent assaults and an abundance of drugs that posed a significant threat to his rehabilitation. Having successfully addressed his dependency issues, he found himself surrounded by drugs in this challenging environment. In a desperate plea to the judge, Maury wrote a letter, urging him to reconsider his sentence, pouring his heart out in the hope of a more lenient outcome. In his plea to the judge, Maury wrote on how he was constantly thinking of taking his own life due to the horrible conditions he is living in. He ended by asking the judge to give him another chance in society. Maury was granted parole in 1994, serving only 5 years and 3 months of his sentence at the Farmington Correctional Center. His early release was primarily attributed to his exemplary behavior. Although he had 13 conduct violations, they were minor infractions. Upon his release, he moved into a duplex where neighbors regarded him as an excellent resident who didn't cause any disturbances. After serving time initially from March 1989 through June 1994, Maury faced additional prison stays due to drug-related charges from February 1998 to January 1999 due to repeatedly violating his parole. Once outside prison, he worked in various restaurants, keeping to himself mostly. He also displayed an unusual fixation for his 2000 black Mitsubishi Eclipse, spending considerable time cleaning and maintaining it. Although neighbors and classmates of Maury didn't have any suspicious information about him, one of his former girlfriends had something different to say.
A boyfriend that I grew to love and wanted to marry and have his children. He told me he would really hurt me. He said, "You don't know me, girl."
When he said, "You don't know me," did you think maybe I don't know him?
I knew to get the hell out of there. He's a very beautiful person. He was supportive, and he helped me build my self-esteem back up.
In March of 2001, Maury's girlfriend left him, and this was when bodies of women began to turn up around town. Between March 2001 and May 2002, Maury would actively pick up sex workers along the extended stretch of Broadway known as the Stroll, north of St. Louis. In fact, 4 suspected victims of Maury were later discovered in this area. It gained notoriety for its numerous crack houses and the availability of such workers. Maury would pick them up and then bring them back to his home in Ferguson. Once there, he would keep some of these women for days, subjecting them to his whims. However, it wasn't solely for his personal satisfaction. He recorded the horrifying events taking place in the basement. Videotapes documenting these acts were later discovered, concealed within a wall. Some of the video clips showed Maury engaging in consensual but rough roleplay involving bondage with women. There were also instances when he was seen using drugs, yet he would let them go unharmed. However, in other footage, Maury could be seen indulging in much darker activities, from keeping women hostage for days in his dungeon to strangling them to death. Law enforcement initially struggled to comprehend why he chose to spare certain women while murdering others. One hypothesis suggests that the tipping point might have been when he discovered that a particular sex worker had children. It appeared that this discovery triggered a violent rage in him, since they chose drugs over their children. although it's not confirmed that's the association they've drawn.
You want to say something to your kids? Mom, you raising your kids. Me and my mom and dad. You ain't raising shit. You on her in your back smoking crack. You ain't going home long. I'm gonna keep you about a week.
Later, he would establish his total dominance.
Say it clear.
He also made them perform the most unbelievable rituals. Maury would get them to dance in white clothes. Then at times, he'd get them to wear sunglasses where the lenses were completely blacked out, so they couldn't see. By doing this, he was taking power away from them completely. He would then restrain their legs with a rope and handcuff them. At times, he'd even cover their eyes with duct tape. In the footage that they found, they saw these women shackled to a wooden post with Maury verbally taunting them. He would tell them what was going to happen, or they needed to berate them as well. At times, he'd get angry because he'd find out that these women had children. He also used to criticize them, expressing aggression and violence due to their choice of drugs over their kids.
I can't hear you what you're saying. Say it clear. You love the master. It pleases me to serve you. You love the master. It pleases me to serve you. Stop, boy. You love the master. It pleases me to serve you. Now you sit your ass down like I said.
In some of the earliest footage, Maury is actually seen standing over a kneeling naked woman, heavily bound with a rope and handcuffed. Then he suddenly grabs the belt, snaps it tightly around her neck, and strangles her until she's unconscious and she's limp. He may even have broken her neck. He then just leaves her body face down on the floor. It's truly horrifying to think that Maury Travis was able to carry out such horrific crimes without raising suspicion. One thing we know is Maury Travis's ability to blend into the background made him a master of disguise. His unassuming nature allowed him to operate unnoticed, making him the last person anyone would suspect of such heinous crimes. On July 31st, 2000, the discovery of the first known victim, Mary Shields, 61, in East St. Louis, Illinois, began a haunting pattern. In the months that followed, the tragedies escalated. On March 24, 2001, the body of Cassandra F. Walker, 19, was found in Washington Park, Illinois. Alyssa Greenway, a 34-year-old caught in a seemingly hopeless cycle of addiction, was discovered deceased on April 1, 2001, in Washington Park, Illinois. Her body showed signs of strangulation, with ligature marks found on her wrists and ankles. Near her body, authorities found a tire impression, identified as a Bridgestone Potenza tire, which was photographed for further analysis. Not long after, on May 15, 2001, Teresa Wilson, 36, was discovered in West Alton, Missouri. May 30, 2001, marked the discovery of Betty James, 46, in St. Louis, with an evident tire impression distinct from earlier scenes. The St. Louis Police Department strongly believed that all these murders were the work of the same individual, as the crimes were executed in a similar manner. By June 29, 2001, Verona Thompson, 36, was found in West Alton, Missouri. Following this, on August 25, 2001, Yvonne Cruz, 50, was discovered in East St. Louis, Illinois. The haunting silence after October 8, 2001, when Brenda Beasley, aged 33, was found dead in East St. Louis, Illinois, raised speculation. Authorities speculated three possible scenarios. Either the perpetrator was in custody, had passed away, or had relocated from the area. However, the unsettling quiet broke as the year changed. The cycle resumed, claiming 4 more lives. The first unidentified victim was found on January 30, 2002. Another unidentified victim was found near Muscatoa, Illinois, on March 11, 2002. The next unidentified victim was discovered in Columbia, Illinois, on March 28, 2002. And the final unidentified victim was reported in West Alton, Missouri, on May 25, 2002. Each day marked a sorrowful moment, revealing a frightening pattern. What ultimately led to uncovering the killer will stun you like never before. In an attempt to bring attention to one of the victims and maintain public interest in the investigation, Bill Smith penned an article. This was about Teresa Wilson, a victim, and her life struggles leading up to her unfortunate demise. He Ain't the Killer, the Streetwalker Strangler. The article was published in the paper's May 19, 2002 issue. What I think I ended up doing was humanizing this woman who, in a way, had kind of dehumanized her own life by getting involved in prostitution and drug activities. Less than a week later, Smith received a letter at his desk. While it's not uncommon for media personnel to receive letters or correspondence, this letter had an unusual return address on the envelope. I Thraldom, 325, 331 Lafayette Street, New York, New York, 10012. The letter bore a St. Louis postmark, indicating it had been mailed locally. The zip code 10012 encompasses portions of Manhattan's Soho, NoHo, Nolita, and Greenwich Village neighborhoods. The letter bore a St. Louis postmark, indicating it had been mailed locally. However, the I Thraldom address is fictional. So why would someone use that term for an address? According to Merriam-Webster, thraldom refers to the state of being an enslaved person. It also served as the name of a bondage website. The letter was typed using what appeared to be Lucida handwriting font in red ink, with minimal punctuation. Smith initially believed it was a prank. He quickly realized the letter was no joke, and that a person claiming to be the Streetwalker Strangler was contacting him. The letter read, Dear Bill, nice sob story about Teresa Wilson. Write one about Greenway, write a good one, and I'll tell you where many others are to prove I'm real. Here's directions to number 17. Search in a 50-yard radius from the X. Put the story in the Sunday paper like the last. The letter Bill received included a map of West Alton, marked with an X, indicating the location of a body. The sender offered to reveal the locations of additional victims and, as evidence of their identity, provided directions to number 17, accompanied by a typed internet-generated map. After finding the skeleton at the marked spot, authorities focused on the map, which appeared to have been generated using an internet mapping service. They found a possible match on Expedia.com, according to an affidavit by FBI agent Melanie Jimenez. On May 30, 2002, Expedia informed Jimenez that Microsoft, based in Redmond, Washington, provided the data for its map site. The FBI requested records of any maps of West Alton made between May 18, 2002, the date of the newspaper story that prompted the letter, and May 21, 2002, the postmark on the envelope. It took 4 days to receive a response. On June 3, 2002, Microsoft reported that only one computer had accessed the map during the specified time period. The company further revealed that on May 20th, the computer had zoomed in on the map of the West Alton, Missouri area approximately 10 times in chronological order, eventually generating a map that matched the one sent to the Post-Dispatch. However, Microsoft could not provide a name, only an IP address, a meaningless string of numbers to most people, 65.227.106.78. To translate the IP number into a name, the FBI turned to WorldCom Incorporated, which provided local telephone numbers to connect internet services to their dial-up customers. WorldCom assigns a temporary IP address to each customer for each internet session. The challenge was not just to identify who used 65.227.106.78, but also to determine who used it at the specific time in question. The next day, on June 4, 2022, WorldCom's Internet Division, UUNet, identified the user as MSN/Maury Travis. This led to the identification of the user's real name, Maury Troy Travis of Ferguson. Before this, back in 2001, Maury also hinted about his crime to one of his coworkers. He told him that East St. Louis was a good place to hide objects due to minimal police presence. He also told his coworker's girlfriend, who worked at a TV station, that prostitutes' bodies were dumped in the same area. Maury didn't state that he was the one who killed them, but he said he knew about it from a friend. The taunting letter to the editor and his hints to coworkers suggest that Maury might have been one of those serial killers who craved attention. His actions indicate a desire to be found, a twisted sense of power derived from the fear he instilled in the community. This information provided the basis for surveillance, and on June 7, 2002, an arrest and search warrant.
I knocked, I said FBI, we have a search warrant. I announced at least 3 times.
The warrant led to the discovery of evidence, including DNA and tire tread marks, linking Maury, a 36-year-old waiter, to some of the killings.
Mr. Short, the first thing out of his mouth was, "It's 7 o'clock in the morning." And you're right, it's 7 o'clock in the morning. And we're serving a federal search warrant. Okay, why are you here? And our response was, "You know why we're here." He dropped his head. He said, "Yeah, I know why you're here."
Investigators launched a thorough search of Maury's residence in Ferguson, Missouri, uncovering a horrifying scene. Hidden within the depths of his home, they discovered a torture chamber. The ground floor of his home was tidy and well maintained. The woman who lived with him, identified as his girlfriend, told police she had no clue about the basement and had never been there. While police officers examined the house and basement, FBI agents and other investigators conducted a 2-hour interrogation of Maury in his living room. They learned that his mother owned the residence and had allowed him to stay there. Authorities later revealed that Maury evaded giving direct answers and instead inquired about how they had located him. Upon being informed that the computer-printed map had led them to his doorstep, Maury became enraged. Shortly after, police escorted Maury outside and placed him in a car. He consented to accompanying the police downtown for further questioning. Computer forensics experts entered the house to inspect Maury's computer, where they uncovered drafts of the letter sent to journalist Bill Smith. Downstairs, investigators uncovered a house of horrors. They found bloodstains on the walls and on the ceiling and on the carpet and furniture as well. Within this, they discovered chilling torture instruments, a menacing stun gun, and newspaper clippings documenting his heinous crimes. But the most disturbing discovery was yet to come. Videotapes capturing Maury's unspeakable acts of violence, subjecting his victims to horrific acts. The evidence from this torture chamber, coupled with DNA analysis, suggested that he committed the murders of between 12 and 20 women. He had been preying on vulnerable individuals, many of whom were drug addicts and sex workers, in the states of Missouri and Illinois between 2000 and 2022. Travis asked for a soda during questioning. Later, the can he drank from was sent to the lab for testing. DNA swabs were taken from the area near the opening of the can for epithelial cells in Travis's saliva, which could be used for DNA testing. Travis's DNA profile was then compared to the biological material found on 2 of the murder victims, Yvonne Cruz and Brenda Beasley. St. Louis Police Captain Harry Heger said that the investigators also found a crude diagram in Maury's home, showing plans for a basement extension. Heger said that Maury was planning to build 2 cells in the basement, where he could chain the women, and then he was planning to build vents connecting the basement to the outside. Heger said that Maury also made a list of things that he needed to keep the woman captive for some time, and that one of the items on the list was adult diapers. We spoke about the victims who are identified, but now let us uncover a few who are not known till the present. On May 25, 2002, the tragic case of St. Charles County Jane Doe came to light, adding another victim to the list of serial killer Maury Troy Travis. The woman's remains were discovered near West Alton, Missouri, leaving her identity shrouded in mystery for 21 years. The discovery of St. Charles County Jane Doe unfolded following the anonymous letter sent to local reporter Bill Smith on May 21, 2002. The skeletal remains of St. Charles County Jane Doe were found west of Highway 67 and south of St. Charles Street, scattered over a 30-foot wide area. It was determined that she was a female between the ages of 25 and 35, of black ethnicity, and approximately 5'4" in height. 1 or more limbs and 1 or both hands were not recovered. The remains found at the crime scene included a sleeveless coarse blues denim dress with metal buttons, a black and silver V-neck stretch shirt with 3/4-length sleeves, a black spandex top, a torn piece of blue jean-type material, a white cotton tube sock, a blue shoestring-type tie-up in the back, and a thin white cotton fragment. A few months prior, on March 28, 2002, another discovery had been made: the remains of an unidentified woman. She would come to be known as Monroe County Jane Doe, one of the three victims of the notorious St. Louis serial killer, Maury Travis. Her identity remains a mystery, her story shrouded in silence. She was believed to be between the ages of 29 and 50, her African American heritage evident in her skin tone. She stood at 5 feet 1 inch tall. Her petite frame weighed about 105 pounds. Her dark brown hair bore the mark of a healed fracture on her forehead, possibly a mark of a childhood injury. There was no indication that she had ever given birth. At the time of her discovery, they could find only skeletal remains, along with a green shirt and the letter M and the word Mavericks in orange lettering. Her attire was completed by khaki canvas shorts and a brown leather belt with a silver buckle. These simple garments provided the only clues to her identity, silent witnesses to her life. Just a few weeks before that, on March 11, 2002, in Marine, Illinois, the remains of Madison County Jane Doe were found. Madison County Jane Doe was believed to be between the ages of 23 and 30. Her ethnicity identified as Black. Her height was estimated to be between 5'1" and 5'6", and she weighed around 105 pounds. She also had dark hair. When discovered, the victim's decomposed body was clad in a red and white checkered flannel-style shirt, bearing the brand Tommy Hilfiger, and a pair of gray shorts from the brand Second Skins. A little under 2 months before that, St. Clair County Jane Doe, a woman whose identity remains a mystery, was discovered on January 30, 2002. Her skeletal remains were found in Mascota, Illinois, though the exact cause of her death remains undetermined. She is presumed to be one of the unidentified victims of serial killer Maury Troy Travis. At the time of her discovery, she was believed to be between the ages of 20 and 40, of African American descent. Her skeletal remains revealed clues about her life, including 3 piercings in her right ear, a healed fracture above her left ankle, and additional healed fractures on her nasal bones, left second rib, wrist, and below her neck. She was found wearing a black velour sleeveless catsuit, bearing the brand Jason Matthews, with full-length legs. 2 yellow metal rings adorned her left middle finger. People were shocked and confused by how a man with such an appealing personality could be involved in these terrible crimes. The mother of one of his ex-girlfriends from Pagedale expressed her shock and disbelief over the news of Maury's arrest. Her daughter had dated him back in 2001, and she described him as a perfect gentleman, who always seemed happy and laid back. She couldn't believe that the man she knew could be different from the person now accused of such heinous crimes. Maury was suspected of being involved in the murders of 12 women, and he was also charged with 2 counts of kidnapping. Federal court documents linked him to these crimes. Police investigators believed that Maury may have killed more than 17 women in total. Following his arrest on June 7, 2002, Maury was taken into custody for interrogation and was placed on preventative monitoring until his trial for the alleged offenses. Just when St. Louis thought justice had been served with Maury's arrest on June 7, 2002, the city saw darkness again. 3 days later, on June 10, 2002, Maury planned to escape his sentence. He did that in the most unthinkable way possible. Maury Travis reportedly wrote a brief note on a sheet of paper in his 8th-floor jail cell in Clayton. Outside the cell, another inmate tasked with monitoring Maury attempted to keep watch through a window. Maury had no desire to spend the rest of his life in prison or face execution by injection. He conveyed to those who would read his final words. Instead, he decided to end his life on his own terms. He explained that he left a note to demonstrate, "You guys didn't kill me." His note read, "Dear Mom, I'm sorry for the pain this caused you and the family. My death seems to be the only way out, and a fast end to all the publicity. You were the best mother a man could have, but I've been sick for a long time, sick in the head, since I was about 14. I don't know why. I was just sick. I've never felt normal or happy at any time in my life. I think about the life I lead and what's ahead of me. This seems the best solution for all involved, especially me, because I won't spend the rest of my life locked up. or worse, let them kill me with a needle. Tell Grandma, Marina, James, and everybody I love them dearly. I love you the most, but you know that. Forever your son, Toby Travis. Jail regulations prohibited the inmate assigned to the anti-self-harm vigil from maintaining a clear view of what was to transpire, and the guards, violating jail rules, skipped two 15-minute checks, providing Maury with 45 minutes of privacy to carry out his plan.
To say that I was angry, to say that people in the newsroom were angry about it and that the community was angry about it is really an understatement. I think people were furious. And the families of those women should have been furious. That absolutely no way should have ever been allowed to happen. When Mr. Travis hung himself, he took all the answers with him.
According to Clayton police, Maury meticulously threaded a torn strip of bedsheet through small holes in a jail wall vent, 6 feet from the floor, and looped the other end around his neck. He placed a pillowcase over his head, stuffed additional cloth into his mouth, and somehow managed to tie his hands behind his back.
I think it's amazing that it's such an incredible tool that through analyzing the computer, we were able to catch someone that was committing crimes like this.
12 years after Maury himself died in prison, his mother, Sandra Travis, still owned the home where he committed his horrific acts in 2014. She rented the home to Katrina McGaw, without mentioning the house's dark past. McGaw learned about the house's history from a television documentary and requested to break her lease, but Sandra refused. News 4 contacted Sandra, who claimed she had informed McGaw about the house's past. McGaw denied this, stating she would have remembered the murders if Sandra had told her. Technically, landlords are not obligated to disclose information about a home's past. In this country, landlords are only required to report physical defects. The St. Louis Housing Authority intervened, allowing McGaw to move out at the end of the month, despite Sandra's objections. The situation was complex. On one hand, it was understandable that Sandra, the mother of a serial killer, would want to put the past behind her. She was legally entitled to rent the house without disclosing any information about past events, but it may not be ethically right to do so. On the other hand, McGaw, who had a 2-year-old daughter, was uncomfortable living in a house where women were tortured and murdered. She also mentioned that her daughter had been occasionally playing near the same pool in the basement where Maury Travis tied up his victims. Considering how disturbing the whole situation was, McGaw understandably wanted to move out as soon as possible. Sadly, the victims found no closure. Moreover, several victims remain unidentified, adding to the heartbreak of this case. After witnessing these tragic events, one thing becomes evident. You never truly know who lives next door. This monstrous individual was carrying out these heinous acts right beneath everyone's noses, escaping notice even from those close to him. What's truly confounding is the mystery surrounding his actions. How could he commit 17 murders in his basement without anyone suspecting a thing? Not even the woman he dated. And then, the ultimate enigma. Why did he choose to end his own life in that prison cell? Was the prison reality more horrific than the agony these women faced? Or was he such a narcissist that he couldn't bear anyone else deciding when his life would end?
We went in, he sat down, he said, Marlene, I have bad news. Susan was found in the trunk of her car. That's what it means. He said Susan was murdered.
Taraskowitz was a Northwest Airlines baggage handler at Logan Airport. Her body was found in the trunk of her car in Revere, a day and a half after she had left the airport to get sandwiches for coworkers.
On Saturday, September 12, 1992, Susan Taraskowitz, a 27-year-old woman from Saugus, Massachusetts, headed to work. Susan was an employee at the Logan Airport near Revere, Massachusetts, and worked as a baggage supervisor. That particular night, Susan was scheduled to work from 11 p.m. on September 12, 1992, till 7 a.m. the next day. However, around 1 a.m. on Sunday, September 13, 1992, Susan left the airport in her car, saying that she was going to get some sandwiches for her coworkers. Sadly, Susan never returned. Just the next day, on September 14, 1992, Susan's car was found abandoned in the parking lot of an auto repair company. When the detectives arrived to look into the matter, they found Susan's body stuffed into the trunk of her car. An investigation into the case made the detectives uncover Susan's life of suffering and a fraudulent scheme. What happened to Susan that night when she left the airport? What was this fraudulent scheme, and was it related to Susan's murder? Saugus, situated in Essex County, Massachusetts, is a charming town nestled within the vibrant greater Boston area. This historic gem, known for its rich heritage, Saugus boasts a tapestry of historic landmarks, exceptional public services, and a thriving local business community. Although Saugus offers both its residents and visitors a warm and welcoming community with a crime rate that aligns with the national average, the town isn't safe from all the dangers. This takes us back to a night in 1992 when 27-year-old Susan Taraskowitz wandered into the dark and never returned home. Susan Taraskowitz, affectionately known as Sue, was born on February 13, 1965, to her parents Ron and Marlene Taraskowitz. Her childhood unfolded in Saugus, Massachusetts, where she shared her formative years with her brother, Ronald, and her sister, Deborah. Throughout her high school days, Sue was both creative and authentic. She enjoyed roller skating, running track, and making art. With the remarkable talents and intelligence Sue possessed, her teachers described her as a gifted person. She had a kind and giving nature, always wanting to help others, and was seen as a good-hearted person with a warm smile. Her friends and family described her as feisty, yet warm and compassionate. She was a quiet and kind student who loved the Snoopy character from Charles Schulz's wildly famous comic strip called Peanuts. There was also a time when Sue was an inspiring cartoonist and even traveled to San Francisco to meet Charles Schulz in person. Upon her graduation from Saugus High School in 1983, Sue continued her educational journey, enrolling at Salem State College, North Shore Community College, and later the Massachusetts College of Art and Design. Sue's life was marked by her creativity, kindness, and a determination to follow her dreams. Sue ultimately landed a job with an airlines company in 1989. Sue made history by becoming the second woman to join Northwest Airlines as a ground services employee on the ramp at Logan Airport in Boston. Working in a male-dominated airline industry, Sue faced numerous challenges, as she was often subjected to harsh treatment by her coworkers. But she was fearless when it came to displaying her capabilities and standing her ground. Her responsibilities included loading and unloading baggage and de-icing planes. Despite the occasional hectic nature of her job, Susan rarely had any complaints. During Sue's time at Northwest Airlines, she went from cleaning jet interiors to achieving yet another milestone in her career in 1992.
Went from 3 different jobs, boarding. She did cleaning the planes, but she wanted to get on the ramp so bad. And the thing that she liked the most was de-icing the planes. So she fought for the job for 3 years. They gave it to another male employee that could not do the job. She was more qualified. She fought for 3 years and got it, and she got all her back pay for it. She handled it very well. She'd come home and say, I handled 100,000 bags today, whatever. It's not a job I wanted her to do. And I told her that I didn't think as a female, especially back then, it was a job for women. But she said that's what she wanted to do. And I said, well, as long as you're careful and remember you are a female.
Sue's determination and loyalty towards her work didn't go unnoticed, and she was handed the role of baggage supervisor, which made her the first woman ever to hold the position for Northwest Airlines at Logan Airport. With the barriers she broke within the airline industry, Sue's professional journey paved the way for many young women to follow their dreams. Although Sue liked working at the airport, she often found herself dreaming about becoming a firefighter someday. And soon, Sue's career path took an unexpected turn when she took the firefighter placement exam and excelled at it. She secured the 8th position on the reserve list for the Swampscott Fire Department and was hoping to join the force soon. Sue was clearly not afraid by the idea of entering other male-dominated industries. She was a career-driven woman, and she was not going to let anything stop her. Sadly, before Sue could hear back from the Swampscott Fire Department, something awful happened. Although Sue lived with her parents, her hectic work schedule often kept her busy at the airport. A lot of times Sue would work overnight and weekend shifts, which frequently took her away from her home, making her miss out on the time she would get to spend with her family. Marlene, Sue's mother, recalled that there were days when she and Sue would hardly get to see each other. Their interactions had been limited to brief passing moments. Marlene would only know that Sue was home when she noticed her work uniform left in a heap of laundry just outside her bedroom door. It was Saturday on September 12, 1992, and Sue had been scheduled to work another night shift which began at 11 p.m. and would end by 7 a.m. the next day. It was one of the busiest shifts, and Sue knew that it was going to be a long night. Although having worked for Northwest Airlines for more than 3 years, Sue had learned her way around these kind of shifts. She knew which hours would be less packed and which ones would not even let her breathe. While working her shift around 1 a.m. on September 13, 1992, Sue offered to fetch some sandwiches for her crew members. She drove her sky blue Toyota Tercel off the airport grounds and headed towards her go-to restaurant in Revere. Hours went by, but Sue never returned. Back at home that same morning, when Marlene didn't see Sue's uniform in the laundry heap, she didn't pay much attention to it. Since Sue worked overtime in the past, Marlene thought that Sue probably got caught up with and would return later. The next day, on Monday, September 14, 1992, Marlene noticed that Sue still wasn't home and the laundry pile was empty. It was unlike Sue to not come home for 2 days in a row without informing her family. That was when Marlene grew concerned and called the airport to check if Sue was okay. To her surprise, Marlene found out that Sue had never shown up for work on Monday, September 14, 1992. As fear crept in, Marlene reached out to the authorities and reported Sue missing.
I got in my car and went to Saugus Police Station. Went into the police station and the female officer asked what she could do for me. I said, I'm here to report my daughter missing. The phone rang. She excused herself and came back and said, Mrs. Taraskowitz, we found your daughter. We've lived in Saugus 32 years, so we knew the chief of police. She said, you need to go in. We went in. He sat down. He said, Marlene, I have bad news. Susan was found in the trunk of her car. That's what it means. He said, Susan was murdered. That same morning, on Monday, September 14, 1992, a manager for Bravo Auto and Tire Service Company, which was located almost 4 miles from Logan Airport in the town of Revere, was heading to work around 7:30 a.m. Driving through Lee Burbank Highway, commonly known as Route 1A, he noticed a car parked in the services center parking lot. He couldn't recall anyone from his workplace having that car. When he walked up to the vehicle to have a closer look, he found blood dripping from the trunk of the car. He rang up the authorities to look into the matter, and shortly after, officers from Massachusetts Police Department arrived at the scene. The detectives instantly recognized the car. It was the same sky blue Toyota Tercel Marlene had described to them when she reported Sue missing. Slightly aware of what was coming next, the detectives opened the trunk, and their eyes were met with a gruesome sight. 27-year-old Susan Taraskowitz's blood-covered body had been crumpled up and stuffed inside to fit into the small area. Sue had bruises and stab wounds on her body, which implied that she had been beaten up before being stabbed to death. The detectives broke the tragic news to Sue's family. Ron, Sue's father, pulled himself together and held Marlene in his arms as she burst out crying. When the detectives searched the car, they found that the money Sue was going to use to buy the sandwiches was still with her. This implied that she never made it to the restaurant that night.
Even though Sue had neither been robbed or assaulted, her family initially assumed that the attack on Sue was not planned. The detectives, too, at first thought that Sue's murder was a random act of violence and believed that she was killed somewhere else before being driven to the auto shop. But as the investigation progressed further, detectives found themselves uncovering a much deeper conspiracy, which led them back to Logan Airport, Sue's workplace. When questioning Sue's coworkers, detectives found out that Sue had received a phone call from someone right before she left to pick up sandwiches for her coworkers on the night before her disappearance. Finding out who this caller was became the utmost priority for the detectives. Even after spending hours conducting interviews with Sue's crewmates at Logan Airport, detectives couldn't identify